Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about loving where you live. Do you like small town life, or are you a big city girl at heart? What would you highlight in a tour of your area? Join us as we learn all about where Mindy lives and why she loves it so much. Let's get started. Listeners, today we are talking about small town life, and we're probably all familiar with the Andy Griffith Show and the charming town of Mayberry. I mean, the country music group Rascal Flatts even sang a song about it. And while it is fiction, the desire to be known and accepted is something we all want in the places we call home. So today, Mindy's going to give us a spotlight on her town of LaGrange, Georgia, as she has lived there for a year now and has completely fallen in love with it. And we're going to talk about some small town versus big town ideas, and then we're going to provide a little travel guide to her town in case you're looking to get away or visit some small towns yourself. And I know that that's the kind of thing that I'll tuck away for the future, especially if you get to hear firsthand accounts. Do you like to do that, Mindy? Like kind of tuck these ideas away of where maybe like you and Bryce could go for a weekend or something?
Oh my goodness, yes. And when Julie mentioned following the Southern Living Instagram account and she talked about the different things that they had, I started following them and I started noticing that they have a plethora of things that they produce on Instagram. But one of the things that I got most excited about were their travel guides. And so they would like spotlight like these are 10, favorite beaches to visit, or these are the 10 best girlfriend getaways. And those were the things I started gravitating to. So one day I was walking and I was like, well, my town is awesome. Like and I know your town is awesome. So I actually remember talking to you and Julie and I was like, I feel like we should kind of love where you live and give a spotlight of where we live. And so we're just kind of starting here with the small town side of it in LaGrange, Georgia, to do kind of that like Southern living idea of, almost like a travel guide.
Oh, I think it's great. And, actually, when we put a call out for listener ideas last year, one of the ideas that someone sent in is tell us about where you live. So whoever sent in that idea, this is your chance to find all about where Mindy lives.
Hey, we're finally making your dreams come true here on Midlife Matters.
Yes. All right. So one of the things that's different for you, Mindy, is you have kind of lived in bigger cities the last few homes that you've had, and now you moved to a smaller one. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, I don't even know how big LaGrange is. What's the population?
All right. So the population is about 40,000 people.
Okay.
That doesn't seem very small when you think of numbers, but I think of it in terms of what do I have access to? What's the education like? What's the healthcare like? What is it like just generally popping around town? And are you going to see people, from church that you see at school, that you see, in your neighborhood?
Right.
And so that was a big transition for us coming from larger towns, because there were things that I remember asking about a particular specialty and asking for a recommendation here, and everyone travels out of town to go do that. And I was like,
okay.
Oh, okay, that's different. Or I would ask for, well, what's like a good body shop for my son to get his car fixed, and everyone recommended one place. And I was like, well, that's nice. Like,
yeah,
but I'm not used to that.
Right.
And so, and it's funny, one of the other differences was just the downtown. The downtown in LaGrange is actually usable and accessible. Like I'm down there every single day parking on the street, whereas all the other cities I lived in, if you talked about going downtown, like it was a whole adventure. Like I'm driving like 20 or 30 minutes to get to the downtown, and it was on rare occasion. Whereas here I live in the downtown. So it's just, there was just a different feel for, coming from larger cities to this smaller town. And for instance, one thing that happened to us in the first week that we moved here was we had a sweet little neighbor girl bring us homemade cupcakes the first night we were in our home. And so the sweet girl, Chloe, brought us cupcakes. And then the next day we went to sign up for gym membership downtown. And a new coffee shop had opened right next to the gym. So we just walk out of the gym and we walk into the coffee shop, and there's Chloe. Oh. And it's funny, there was Chloe, and then she's introducing us to anybody and everybody that she knows that's in the coffee shop. And Jacob and I walk out, and Jacob makes the comment. He said, "So is that how it is here?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Like you're going to see people everywhere."
Yeah.
And I said, "Jacob, I think that's how it is here."
Right. So on the one hand, you can appreciate running to people you know. On the other hand, if you're having a bad day, you better keep it to yourself because it might come back to haunt you.
Yeah, you're going to want to make sure you're ready to see people because you will see people.
Yes. Well, that's neat. And it's neat that your kids picked up on that right away.
Oh, in the first week. So yeah, it just became evident very quickly that we were going to see, anybody we met, we were going to see them.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Now let's talk just a little bit about the pros and cons that you've noticed moving to a small town. Like, what are the pros that you've noticed about moving to a small town?
It was very easy to meet people quickly. People were eager to meet us. And then as soon as we met one person, we realized that they were connected with a web of other people. And so Bryce and I coined that it's a LaGrange thing, because we started saying that after a while, because anytime you met someone like our real estate agent, her son is connected with them and their daughter's connected with them, and their child went to this school and this neighbor's child goes to that school, and they room together. And that's everybody. Like we noticed that when we met one person, we were really meeting about 10 to 15 people or family groups that were interconnected in some way. And so while that might feel like it puts you on the outside, all it meant for us, or the way that we've been treated, is they all welcomed us. Because nice. Then as soon as we would meet someone, they knew who we were. Oh yeah, we heard you guys were in town. Oh yeah, you're so-and-so's neighbor. Yeah. And
that's nice.
It's like we met people quickly, but they also were meeting us quickly, or were expecting us because we were new. Then the house that we bought, this is on my cons list, but there's not a lot of real estate options. Like, you kind of get what you get.
Right. Whatever's available is what you choose from.
Those are your options. And so we had a great real estate agent moving here, and we got most of what we wanted. And there were some things that we couldn't find in this area, but we got close enough.
Yeah.
And it's funny because people were like, "Oh, which house did you buy?" Because everyone knows all the houses.
Sure.
And they knew it from the first people that ever owned the house, which is 2 families ago. So they call it that house by their name. So then when we met people, we were like, "Oh yeah, we bought so-and-so's house." "Oh yeah, I know what that's at."
You don't even need to give out your address. Just give out the previous owner's name.
No, everybody knows. And it's funny because it just made us kind of snicker and laugh. I mean, it didn't feel creepy. It didn't feel like everybody was in our business. It was actually from a sweet point of view. It's just like very innocent. Actually, that's a good word to describe it. So the other thing, another major pro was obviously smaller town, slower pace of life. And I would term that peaceful. It's a more peaceful existence. On my con list, the number one thing is there's no Target.
Yeah, that would be a con. It'd be hard to go back to being without Target.
Oh my goodness. I thought I would die, but Maria, I haven't died.
Well, how far do you have to travel to get to a Target?
To get to a Target, I've got 3 to choose from, and each of them are 45 minutes away.
Okay, so you can go in any direction 45 minutes and find one.
Yes. And so, and actually that's proven to be enjoyable, because then when I go out of town, I'm out of town, and I get essentially all of those errands run together. And I have found, like, I typically go about 2 to 3 weeks before I feel like I need to go to town. It's, the bigger town. So, but that also then makes it more peaceful and slower pace of life, because you're just not going to be going out as much. The things that you do are just more local, not as much to choose from.
Yeah.
One of the pros is that everything is personal. Any business that you conduct, any person that you work with, you're going to be neighbors with, you're going to see them at church, you're going to see them at the store. And so there's no separation between the compartments of your life. You know, how I know that in bigger cities, we would compartmentalize, you know, like, oh, these are our work friends. These are our church friends. These are our neighborhood friends, you know, these are our soccer family friends. And so, but in LaGrange, everybody's everybody. So there's no compartmentalization amongst people. So, and I will say, so you better make sure your business dealings are good, because you're going to know everyone connected with them, and you're going to see them all the time. And so it's been so sweet though, in that regard, because you really do feel like you're a part of the community faster, because you're seeing, again, the same people, you know, at street markets and fairs and things like that. So one of the other pros is just the access to, first of all, the Florida beaches.
Oh, yeah. How far are you from the Florida beaches?
So really from the Panhandle, we're like 4 hours.
Okay. Not bad.
So it's not bad at all. It is so much easier to go to the beach and then and come home. And so we can do that in a weekend a lot easier. And then the other access point is is Atlanta, and all the things that Atlanta offers, to include the international airport. Okay. So ironically, we used to live in Atlanta, and it took us longer to get to the airport when we lived in Atlanta than living an hour south of Atlanta and driving just to the airport.
Oh, so, okay. Yeah, just the way the traffic patterns are, probably.
It's the traffic patterns. It's a much easier drive. So we're on the south side, and the airport's on the south side of Atlanta.
Nice.
So I just feel like we have access to all these professional teams of any type of sport. And we still see people from LaGrange every time we go to a professional sporting event in Atlanta.
That's funny.
Yes.
Yeah. That's cool.
And the airport. And so those are kind of my spotlight pros to like our small town here. And the caveat here is that obviously LaGrange is not every small town. So the things that I'm saying are very much just our story and wouldn't necessarily transcend every small town. So don't hear me saying that.
Right. Well, I grew up in a town of about 3,500 maybe, which is totally different than a town of like 30,000. And when my two oldest were babies, we lived in a town of about 30,000. And that was more similar to what you're saying. We could drive a little over an hour and get to Buffalo, or, you know, you could drive a little farther and get to Rochester, or, you know, you went to Erie, Pennsylvania, you could have, you know, tax-free shopping at the mall and Target, like, but you always had to go 45 minutes to an hour to get to bigger things like that. But I do think that it does promote a slower pace of life, because you're not just always running out for anything that happens to pop into your mind. Like, you probably actually have lists, and when you go, you're like, I need to get this.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I always have a running list. When I go to Auburn, I have to do this UPS drop off, a Target return, an Old Navy return, and I need to go by Dick's Sporting Goods. And so, and I'm picking up my favorite salad from Nuke's, because that's like, because I don't get
treat.
it.
Yeah.
It is. So sometimes I am tempted if I'm missing a certain food. Like, I'd really like to drive out of town just to go get this meal that I want. Because I'll start with my cons list.
Yeah. What's your cons list, 50?
Well, again, number one, there's no Target.
Yeah.
We've already talked about that. So you end up doing more online shopping.
I was going to say, do you have the Target debit card?
I don't.
Because you get free shipping. It doesn't even have to add up to $35, you know. And it's coming, you know, and it's debit. So, yeah, that's the only reason I have that. I've had it for years, is because if I want to order a $12 item, I don't need to save up in my cart for $35 to get free shipping. I can just hit send it to me. And you save 5% on all your purchases. So,
yes.
It may be something. If you don't live near a Target, look into the Target. I think they might call it the red card, but you can get it debit or credit. But I just have the debit one, and makes shipping a lot more reasonable.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, that would be nice. Right now, I'm just like, I need to go out of town. So definitely online shopping is my friend. there's really kind of a lack of competition when it comes to businesses and services here.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can create some higher prices for
Mm-hmm.
things than what you would typically spend. But at the same time, you are supporting local families and local businesses that have been running for a long time. So I hate to put that on my cons list, but maybe I'll just say kind of it can be more expensive in essence to live in a smaller town because of it. There's limited hours and choices of restaurants and stores. And of course, Target could have fallen in that category. I just felt like it needed its own, mention. So it's kind of funny, but sometimes we're like, it's like 7:00 at night and we're thinking, oh, we'd love to go out to ice cream. Well, there's nowhere to go.
They all closed.
Or it's Sunday afternoon. Oh, there's 2 restaurants open. And now when I say that, the caveat is that we do have chains. We do have some chain restaurants here. But the beautiful thing about LaGrange is you buy locally, you use the local restaurants. It's much better food. It's much better shopping to do the local boutiques and the local stores and restaurants. However, then you do have limited hours. I do remember my mom was visiting one weekend and we were like, oh, let's go do everything downtown. And so we went downtown. We noticed like one store was closed. We're like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. All right, let's walk down to this other one. Oh, it's closed too. I'm like, it's in during a weekday. And so I'm really mystified as to what's going on. Like my favorite coffee shop's closed, the boutique, the shoe store, like everywhere's closed. And so we walk into the visitor center, which is brand new and just beautiful. And the sweet lady in there, we're talking to her and she said, oh yeah, everything's closed on Mondays.
Oh.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that is something to get used to because if you live in a bigger area, it seems like things never close.
Right. It's just like, okay, now I know everything's closed downtown on Mondays because they have their family owned businesses.
Sure.
And they have
sense.
worked. Yeah, they've worked the weekend. So the other thing that I noticed is I've mentioned before that I intermittent fast. So sometimes I want to eat lunch at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, the local restaurants have lunch between 11 and 2, and then they close and they reopen for dinner at 5.
Okay.
And so it's funny because there was one day I couldn't find any place. Like I was like, oh, I just feel like getting lunch from somewhere. And well, this restaurant's closed on Monday. These people are closed down to prepare for the dinner time, right? People. And I'm like, wow, there's nowhere to go. And I don't,
Yeah.
It was a learning curve. I mean, it's so we laugh about it now. We're like, okay, that's a LaGrange thing.
Yeah. And it does. I think it sets boundaries in your day almost and kind of boundaries in your week. And it's kind of nice to know. It's like when a holiday comes around, I'm kind of happy to know that I can't go anywhere because it's closed. It really takes the pressure off. And so if you're in a small town and things are closed, it really takes that pressure off you. Well, it's closed anyways. I can't take care of that right now.
You're absolutely right. And then I get more excited to go when they're open. And so, yeah, then I feel really, really super special, to be able to hit them at the right time. And I will plan for it now. And I guess the only other thing I would say is it's funny. I mentioned the healthcare earlier is that we have excellent healthcare here, but not every specialty necessarily is in town. Or if you have a really serious situation, then you will get flighted to Atlanta, probably. And so, I mean, there's just that. I mean, but for a town our size, our healthcare is actually really excellent.
Oh, good.
So that's kind of my punch list for pros and cons.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if we did a pros and cons for city, there'd be a long list of those too. Like there's no place that's hits all the boxes because we want like things that are opposite. We want convenience, but we also want it to be slow.
Peaceful.
We want we like it when things are closed, but then when we need something, well, we want it all to be open. Like we can't be pleased.
No. And so it's funny because a lot of those things I had to pick a pro or a con, but they really, it's like, well, you can't have one without the other.
Right.
Like you just said. And so they're not 100% like negative or 100% positive. It makes it a charming place to be.
Sure. Well, let's talk about LaGrange specifically because I'd like to know a little bit about it. Like, how long has it been like incorporated or whatever on the city sign? How long has it been around?
Right. I know. How'd we get here?
Yeah.
That was really neat. So I'll do just a very brief history of kind of how we started. And then I'll give kind of an idea of what has kept us growing. Like I said, we are 60 miles southwest of Atlanta. We're close to Alabama. Our town square, and I'm bringing up the town square first because it goes into how we were named LaGrange. So our town square has a beautiful water fountain and statue of Marquis de Lafayette, who was a French aristocrat and American revolutionary hero, who essentially gave us the name of LaGrange. This is back in 1825 to 1828 timeframe.
Oh, wow. So that's old.
Old. And so what gave us the LaGrange name was he remarked that the Western Georgia countryside was very similar to his wife's estate in France that was named LaGrange.
Oh, interesting. So yeah.
We were actually, because of the topography and everything, he was like, yeah, this reminds me of her estate in France.
Cool.
So there you go.
And you guys are coming up on your, I don't know what it would be, but it's like 200 years.
Yes.
Wow. I'm sure there'll be a big celebration with a big parade.
I'm sure that they'll probably shut the whole downtown down, have street markets and everything. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. So let's see. So that's kind of how we got our name. Then around 1888, the biggest industry to kind of help grow the town was started with the first cottonseed oil mill. And it became the first cotton manufacturer in LaGrange. And so by 1920, there were 9 cotton manufacturers. And so this growth of that particular industry, it just became an important staple in the community. And it brought to town Fuller E. Callaway, who then became very influential in the future growth and development of the area. And so that cotton mill now, the main textile industry here is Milliken, which is still running in existence and is still part of LaGrange. But I'll go into later. There's other industry that has come to the area.
Now, the name Callaway is, and I've heard of this from people that like to go to Georgia, Callaway Gardens. Is it associated with him at all?
It is associated with Callaway Gardens. This is a really cool part of our history, is the Callaway family and then the Callaway Foundation. That's part of our history, and it's an extremely important part of our history, because as soon as we came to town, we started noticing that there were really beautiful buildings, or the schools were really beautiful, or like I said, Lafayette Square was really beautiful. And every time we asked, like, oh, wow, like how did this come to be, or how did this happen? The churches are really beautiful. Every time we were turning around, people were like, oh, yeah, the Callaway Foundation this, the Callaway Foundation that. Their family estate is called Hills and Dells, and that is located here in LaGrange, and it's a place you can go and tour. And they have gardens, and they have educational classes and horticultural things and painting and, building wreaths. Like it's a whole estate grounds that's still here in the middle of town. But the family started with Fuller E. Callaway. It's funny. One of our neighbors told a personal story of meeting Fuller Callaway a long time ago. He said that he came down to First Baptist Church on the square. He pulled up and he saw like a yard guy out there working, and he went to ask, for directions to something. And it was Fuller Callaway, and he was helping the guy, figure out where to go. And so then after talking and everything, they realized, oh, this is like, he's over like the Callaway Foundation. He's over like all of the stuff that has been done. But Fuller E. Callaway has a great reputation for just being hands-on service, servant-hearted. I'm not kidding when I say that family has touched every single part of LaGrange.
Okay. Yeah.
They have given land for healthcare. They helped bring in the local hospital. They gave all the land to them. They've brought in a cancer center, a heart clinic,
Wow.
things like that. Education. They have donated land for high schools, land for, elementary schools. And so like we have LaGrange High School, we have Callaway High School. LaGrange College was brought in through the Callaways, and they built Callaway Stadium, which the 3 local high schools actually every single weekend take turns playing their home games at, because that's the one main football stadium in the town.
Oh.
So that's really cool. They helped develop every city and county, a lot of city and county projects. So land for fire station, land for everything. And so they helped develop the local churches. So every time we were turning around, it was like, oh yeah, the Callaway Foundation matched funds to build this. They built the gym downtown. They helped develop this, but all around town, somebody said it this way, anything beautiful that was done extremely well was done with help through the Callaway Foundation.
Interesting. And what a treasure.
Oh my goodness. I was thinking about their family, and it's so baffling to me that that's the legacy they chose to spend their money on. You can really choose to spend your wealth any way you want, however much you have. And their legacy is investing in this community, every aspect you can possibly think of. And so it's still an active foundation to this day, but it really is a tremendous part of why LaGrange is so charming and so wonderful. What a great place to live because of the Callaway family.
Oh, so interesting.
Yes, Callaway Gardens is a part of that family, and there's a lot more that goes on there, but I kind of gave you the nuts and bolts of the history.
Yeah. Well, I've always wanted to see Callaway Gardens too. So if I went to see Callaway Gardens, is that close to LaGrange?
Callaway Gardens is in Pine Mountain, and it's only 20 minutes from here.
Okay.
And fun fact, Bryce and I got engaged at Callaway Gardens.
You did? Oh, isn't that cool? Everything comes full circle.
It was because we did not go back to Callaway Gardens until he was interviewing for the job here in LaGrange. And it was 25 years later.
Isn't that interesting? Wow, that's really
cool.
Who
knew?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that's really neat. Very neat. Well, in addition to Callaway, what other industries have kept the town going? Because I know what happens with a lot of small towns is the main industry that started them moves out. And then if nothing else moves in, it just kind of dies.
You are right. Right. It definitely started with Milliken. Well, not Milliken. It started with the cotton mills, and now Milliken being the textile industry that's here. But we have Duracell that is here now. Duracell has a plant. There's a very large Kia plant in the area. Wellstar Health System out of Atlanta now owns West Georgia Medical here in town. Then there's several distribution centers here. Walmart, UPS, both have distributions here. And there's Caterpillar here. And there's also a Great Wolf Lodge here, which is interesting. And so, and then I don't want to leave out the lake community. That's something else that draws people. I know it's not industry, but LaGrange is an interesting place because people will be here and they're like, oh yeah, I used to come here as a kid, like to go camping on the lake at West Point Lake. Or we have several neighbors that moved here to retire.
Okay. So tell me about West Point Lake. Is that within the town?
Yes, there's water everywhere.
Yeah, because I don't really picture there being water everywhere in the middle of Georgia, but
there is water everywhere. It's wild. But so West Point Lake is here in LaGrange and in West Point, and also goes into Alabama.
It's large.
And what's really amazing about the lake itself is that all of the land surrounding West Point Lake is owned by the Corps of Engineers, which means that they control it, and they have very strict rules about not building any structure that is seen from the lake. You can't clear trees. Like even in our backyard, they have trees with like a red line around it, and that's their property. So like our property only goes so far, then the Corps of Engineers owns the rest, and you can't clear trees. So when you're on West Point Lake, it is extremely peaceful. All you see is water, trees, and you'll see people's docks coming out from the trees.
Yeah. So they can build a home, but it's really not visible from the water.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting.
So there are, like I said, some of our neighbors, we've met a lot of people that have moved out of Atlanta looking for a more peaceful place to live.
Yeah. I can see why that'd be a draw.
Yes. So they're looking for that. And they also want lake life. And it's so accessible here.
Makes me want to take a trip there right now.
it's really charming. It's really charming. I feel like everybody owns a boat or has a boat somewhere. Or, It's neat to see. There are people that have moved here for jobs. Most of the people have been born and raised here and gone away to school and then come back, like to start practices, their professional practices. So no other place have I lived where I've heard of more kids coming back home to start their practices or to develop professionally in the town they grew up in. But I feel like that is something really special about this place. The retirees, the families that have been born and raised here and then continue to come back and raise their kids here. It's really a gem.
It is, because I think that's one of the things about living in a small town that it always kind of made me hesitant to stay in a small area was, well, what about my kids when they grow up? They're going to have to go to college and then get jobs outside of that. And then, I'm going to have to travel to see them or whatever. That's one of the things I've appreciated about living in the Nashville area is you can go away to school and come back and find a job, but that's not the norm everywhere. I'm glad to hear that in LaGrange, you have the same opportunity.
It's interesting that has happened since, people just start their own businesses. Like if there's not already a company with what they want to do, they start it. It's funny because when they met us and they're already trying to get our kids to move back, our adult children. Oh. And so they heard like Abby's a labor and delivery nurse and Joey's an accountant. And they're all like, oh yeah, she can work here and he can work here. Like, there you go. What are they waiting for? Why aren't they moving?
I know. Come on. We've got a job for them. Send them on their way. And that's great.
It's really, really sweet. I mean, they are a loyal community, loyal, friendly, welcoming. I'll say football is king. Well, I better put baseball. Some people might get mad. But
sports in general.
But we are only 45 minutes from Auburn. So Auburn University, like there's so many graduates from Auburn that live here, but it also, we live in Georgia though, and UGA, that's the other half of the town. And so it's a really big rivalry here in the town and you feel it. And it's a fun rivalry is Georgia versus Auburn. So that's a fun thing to be a part of and lots of spirit going on.
Oh, that's cool. That does sound really good, Mindy. It sounds like LaGrange is like the perfect town. Like you're small, but it's big enough where, there's enough going on. Your kids could come back. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of pluses for it that may not be typical for the small town. Are there other things like that we should know about?
There are some unique things that we have found here, and no town is perfect, but I have so many wonderful things to say about LaGrange. So I am just, forgive me as I just.
Are you going to be hired by their Chamber of Commerce?
I don't know. But I am an outsider coming in. So nobody has paid me to say these things. These are all observations that my family has made over the past year. And so as we have navigated this town, there are things that we have been surprised at finding in a small town. And so I'll just kind of breeze through just kind of a little list of things that we found that have been really exciting to us. LaGrange has 2 symphony orchestras here. There's a ballet company. There's an opera company. There's a TV station and archives. We've got 2 colleges. I mentioned LaGrange College. We also have West Georgia Technical College. We have, we actually have a winery. It's called Nutwood Winery, and it is the most charming little outdoor place. And they just do all kinds of things. They have live music. They have different events. But it's so accessible. Like it's not one of those things that's so exclusive you can't be a part of it. Oh no, you can be a part of it.
Good.
And so we have an outdoor amphitheater called Sweetland. I got to go see Boys to Men last year
In
at
LaGrange?
Sweetland. Yes.
Cool.
And I even went up to stage and got a rose from one of them.
Did you really?
Oh yeah, girl. Yeah. But they have food trucks and you see everybody. Like I felt like we were brand new, but when we walked into Sweetland, well, that's what everybody does because there's nothing else to do, And so everyone goes to do the same things. And so that helped kind of,
it
make us feel
real
more
sense
at
of
home.
community if you're all doing and talking about the same things.
Yes. And so, and at Sweetland, they even turn it into a outdoor ice skating rink in the winter.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Now it's not huge. There were a lot of ruts going on in the ice, but I was successfully able to make it around the rink a couple times.
Good. That's an experience, just to be outside on a rink.
Oh my goodness. Especially this far south. It surprised me, that it did stuff like that. And they'll play like Friday night movies while you're ice skating. It's just this local, like small town stuff that, again, is just awesome. There's a couple of festivals that are award winning. The only one I'll mention, it's nationally acclaimed. We have an Azalea Storytelling Festival, which is really cool. And then I have to put this on there. I've already mentioned sports once, but my goodness, Atlanta has every type of pro sports team you can possibly imagine. So getting tickets and going to these games, it's so accessible and you're home within an hour to an hour and a half. And again, like we actually got tickets to an NBA game last year and we got to walk out on the court, like as a special thing with Bryce's work. Well, one of our neighbors happened to be there and took a picture of us on the court.
That's funny.
And I'm like, when does that happen? I mean, in this whole arena that our neighbors would be there and see us and take a picture. So we have a picture of being on the court.
That's cool.
So those are just like some highlights of like, there are things to do. And again, everybody's kind of doing the same things because there's not a million things going on.
That is so cool. I mean, it sounds like, you've only been there a year, but it almost sounds like you've lived there 10 years.
I do feel that way, Marie. And I think that's why I feel so grateful because there have been things that have happened in the past year that have really just meant a lot to me, that have made us feel more at home. Obviously, we were nervous about moving the boys. And I remember really praying that there would be room for them. There would be room for us to be able to serve, to be able to do the activities we wanted to do or being in, serving positions that we wanted to be in. And I think that's one of the things is there has been room for us. The boys wanted to play sports and they had opportunity to. There's still competition. They still have to compete for a spot, but like they can be on the team.
That was one of the things that I think of when I think about small town living is it's not so cutthroat. You can try more things in the schools and it's not like you had to have been doing it since you were 3 years old. And I think that's such a great advantage for smaller towns.
Oh, it is. It is. So for them to be able to really try or be a part of anything they want to, for Bryce and I, the same way, it's like, oh, you want to do this? Yeah, we got room for you. Come on.
It's really nice. Yeah.
And so there's been that. And then let's see, there are personal things that have happened that I think could happen in any town, but it just meant a lot to us when it happened here, like emergency healthcare situations. Like Jacob one of his teeth got knocked out of place at a basketball game last year. And our neighbor is a dentist and he is like, bring him in right away. And it's just, you don't make an appointment, just come in, And so again, that meant a lot to us. I broke my toe over Memorial Day weekend. Well, one of our friends is a podiatrist and he owns his own place here. And he's told us to meet him at his office on Memorial Day. He's in swimming trunks, headed to the lake and setting my toe for me. And like that, again, that could happen anywhere. It happened here and it happened with us. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is so, so special. There's the athletic director at the high school when he saw that I had two boys coming in last year, first of all, he called me on the phone. Well, tell me about yourselves. Where'd you come from? Where'd you guys grow up? Well, tell me about your boys. What do they like? Oh, and then he called every coach of any interest they might possibly have to reach out to Jacob and Nathan and invite them to come be a part of stuff.
That's really unusual and special.
It is. And that was last summer. Well, then this summer we found out there was this Georgia thing that we were caught off guard for Jacob to get his license. It's something that Tennessee doesn't require. I called the same athletic director. And so he called over the summer. We're talking on the phone. He's like, oh yeah. So I'm not sure how to do this, online or whatever. He's like, here's what I'll tell you. Just have Jacob come down and I'll meet with him one-on-one and we'll get this squared away on Monday so that he can go get his license. Oh, and I'm like, he spent 2 hours with Jacob on his personal time over the summer so that Jacob didn't have to wait to get his license.
Oh, that means a lot. Yeah.
So they're just like these personal touches that have happened that I don't want to forget. And I want to know, it makes it such a special place for our family to be.
Oh, that's wonderful. It sounds like you've been welcomed with open arms, and in return, you've just grown to love the place.
Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, how cool.
When you come visit, there you go. Yes. I've got a whole list of things.
I know. And if this is not somebody that's listened to our podcast very long, I mean, maybe you should just tell people real quickly, like how many different places you've lived, Mindy. Like you can compare LaGrange to a lot.
Okay, well, I don't have a number because I can't remember.
Yeah, but just name some of them. I mean,
and many. I'll say, let's see. Okay, Atlanta, Nashville, Knoxville, Philadelphia. Let's see, Missouri, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Hawaii.
So you've got you've got some experience. I think that's one of the reasons that you can appreciate it, because someone that's grown up there, to them, that's just normal. But if you've moved around the country and lived in a lot of different areas, you are fully aware of the fact that not every place would offer those personal touches.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I have watched, and like I said, I am an outsider. And so these are just observations we've made. And of course it's hitting at the right time in my life. I'm midlife. I don't need to have a Target on the corner.
Right.
So it is very special. And I realize how unique it is. These are things we've not experienced before.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. That's really good. And, I think that is something to keep in mind, that you are in midlife and experiencing this new place. And, there's probably other midlife people moving around, and, that's always tough, but you've really, really grown to love your place in the last year.
We have. And I think I'll just say thank you. Thank you, LaGrange. Thank you to the people, because it's very unique and it's special, and I do not take it for granted.
Yes. Well, I loved hearing about this, and we definitely want to come and visit, Julie and I. And I feel like I neglected to say at the beginning of the episode that Julie's not on with us today because she's doing her own traveling with John. And so she's gone. And so we just thought that this would be a good topic to do by ourselves. But we do miss you, Julie. And I am definitely planning on the two of us going to visit Mindy this fall, because I really want to see LaGrange. And I really want to see that place that you said that has all the things, Hills and Dales or something.
Yes. The Callaway family residence, I guess.
Yeah, I'm always up for any historical tour in any town.
Oh, yes. I thought of you often, and I think of Julie with her photography skills. I'm like, oh, Julie would take such a beautiful picture of that.
Yeah. By the time you've had all the people around the country come and visit LaGrange, you could be a tour guide at some of those places, probably.
Hey, I would love to give people an inside information on how to navigate this place, because it is truly special.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing with us, Mindy. And listeners, if you're familiar with LaGrange, or you want to say, hey, I've been there, or I grew up there, or I visited there and camped when I was young, come and find us on Instagram. Mindy's going to post some pictures this week, Midlife Matters Podcast, or you can always email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. But before we go, we always do I'm a fan. And Mindy, in addition to LaGrange, what are you a fan of this week?
Tongue in cheek, since there's not a ton of stuff to do, we really love our streaming services at home.
Okay. And do you have different ones?
Okay. We have just finally canceled Disney Plus. We weren't really watching it. I think we had watched everything on it, but we haven't had Netflix in a couple of years.
Oh, now there'll be a whole new library opening up for you.
I can't tell you how excited I am. My I'm a fan is Netflix, but also switching up your streaming service every once in a while, because then you just have this plethora of things to watch. So like last night we watched The Gray Man, which
I heard of that. Is it a movie?
It's brand new. It's like a #1 movie right now on something. Okay, lots of action. So Bryce's take on the movie was, this is awesome. There's so much action. And Abby's take on it was so dumb. It was just all fighting.
Yeah.
So I don't really care. It was new. And we had been scrolling through things like, we've seen that, you know.
Right.
So anyways, my new streaming service being Netflix right now.
Oh, well, you're going to have to start sharing things that you're a fan of, because, you know, you run out of things that you want to watch, but then someone brings up something, because for some reason you can never see all of it. It kind of tailors to you. So yeah, we'll be interested in your recommendations.
And you too.
Okay, I'm a fan this week of a movie. It's a new movie, and our book club had read the book, I'll say 2019. I know it was before COVID, Where the Crawdads Sing. And so the movie's out, and we went as a group on Monday night and really, really enjoyed it. For those of you that aren't familiar with the story, it's about a girl who basically has a dysfunctional family, and she ends up raising herself in the marshlands of North Carolina. And then she is accused of murdering a young man in the town. And it's very interesting. It's kind of a good murder mystery, but not like anything super scary, just more like what happened. Have you heard of the book or the movie, Mindy?
Yeah. Okay. So I did read the book. It was part of a book club when we were outside of Philadelphia. And it was unlike any kind of murder mystery I had ever read. It was very unique. And I have not seen the movie yet. So what did you think of it?
Is really beautiful. And I knew it would be, because there was a lot of description in the book, and the way they brought that all to life, you know, even just her house. Now, I will say that her clothes in her house probably look a little nicer than you would think somebody raising themselves out in the marshlands would look. But it's really like kind of like candy for your eyes. Like it's just really, it's just beautiful scenery, beautiful everything about it. And then it's an interesting story. We had kind of a smaller group going with us. So I asked two of my daughters that were not working that night, I said, would you guys like to come? Because they had mentioned wanting to see it. And neither of them had read the book, and they both enjoyed the movie. So you don't have to have read the book. They both really liked the movie. So
that's good to know, Marie. I wondered if that was a good movie.
Yeah. So Where the Crawdads Sing, if you haven't seen it, you might want to go out before it leaves theaters. I think it's going to be around for a while, though, because our movie theater was pretty full.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mindy. This was awesome hearing about LaGrange, and I hope that I get to come soon and actually put pictures with your words. You know, I really want to see it, and it sounds like a wonderful place.
And I will try to give our listeners a spotlight of kind of my favorite spots with pictures this week, you know, so you can kind of get a picture of it too.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing, and I look forward to talking with you next week.
Sounds great.
All right.
All right. Bye.
We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.